Chapter 10, His Story or History. Wanyenyekevu saw the diversity among the people and wanted them to coexist in peace, so he organized an educational system and sent for Neriglisar to relocate from Madinat al-Tanwir to Tucson. Neriglisar organized some of his students to become teachers, and the people learned about each other's history, culture, and religious beliefs. Neriglisar and Wanyenyekevu wanted a very nationality and culture to live together to serve and fight for Sabaoth. They held a meeting and demanded the entire area and all the locations under Wanyenyekevu rule to teach, and all had to attend, starting from the age of 15. The people loved their new family and felt like they belonged for the first time, and they served Sabaoth with their mind, body, and soul, calling it el Templo de Dios, or the Church of God. After everything was said and done, everyone noted. Everyone and everything. Their education system was so organized the people willingly began teaching each other, and opened their minds and hearts to their new neighbors. It did not surprise Wanyenyekevu that many people knew the history and stories of their cultures very well, and many could go back thousands of years, except their Neo-Wakatilian family. From Picacho Peak to Colonia Anahuat, the 12 battalions took on military responsibility for a month. They rested, learned, and cared for their family until their division was called upon, on a month of duty and 11 months of rest. Many wise and intelligent members of the group took classes. The leader of each battalion took courses on various subjects, but everyone added Wakatilian history, until everyone was familiar with it. They talked about the unsung heroes of slavery, the civil rights movement, sports, educational heroes, and much more. People like Horatio King, Tom Molyneux, John Baxter Taylor Jr., Erlene Brown, and Harold E. Greer. They talked about Reverend William Washington Browne, a former Georgia slave who founded the first ever black-owned bank in America, the Savings Bank of the Grand Fontaine United Order of True Reformers. Onesimus, an enslaved man who created a way to keep people from getting sick with smallpox. The story of Jaswant Singh Rawat, the gallant rifleman, highly regarded as the hero of the Indochina War, and William Ellison, a former slave who once was one of the wealthiest men in the South. However, many thought that Wanyenyekevu would teach about history, but he introduced his life lessons to their surprise. The things he learned on his way to Arizona taught him something he didn't know or things he took for granted. He taught his pupil skills, such as communication and interpersonal skills, decision-making and problem-solving, creative thinking and critical thinking, self-awareness, and empathy, which he called emotional intelligence. He taught assertiveness, stability, integrity, and resilience. Friedrich taught history. He would open his classes with questions to question the authors of history, saying the interpretations of any authors could be wrong, or do the written records reflect the historian's insights, biases, and limitations. One must research that history on their own and gather their conclusions. For instance, if the Mexicans and Texas Rangers wrote from their side of the story, what would be the facts and opinions during La Matanza? Since the Mexicans are all dead, let us say what we know. When the Texas Rangers were formed, they were supposed to be the symbol of American toughness at the border. They battled the indigenos for dominance in the region, chased down runaway slaves who sought freedom deep within Mexico, and settled scores with anyone who challenged the Anglo-American project in Texas. These Texas Rangers and some white civilian vigilantes shared the same views. Yet, they murdered thousands of Mexicans and Tejanos, a name used for Mexican descendant Americans in South Texas. We are supposed to hail them as heroes. Some were Mexican revolutionaries, but most were ordinary people caught into violent crossfire. We know this as a fact. La Matanza broke out between the rising tensions between Texas and Mexico following the Mexican Revolution. After the revolution, Mexican refugees migrated to the US, looking to escape the violence and political unrest in their own country, causing the Mexican population in Texas to triple, which led to violent scuffles on the border. The bandit war and a series of Texas raids carried out by Mexican rebels from Tamaulipas, Coahuila, and Chihuahua led to Anglo-Texan counter-raids involving the Texas Rangers, who were responsible for the deaths of 5,000 Mexican Americans. President Woodrow Wilson ordered on 110,000 more National Guardsmen from state militias to the border for patrol duty in Brownsville, Texas, to help with the violence at the border. But we know also well what happens when you move into America's white neighborhood. But yet instead, they have claimed to be Native Americans for money and land, reach the term, the $5 Indian. We know how they have wiped out the entire African population for resources for centuries. But if it weren't for the Moors, they probably would be dead of centuries ago. Getting off the subject, which Friedrich often did, he had to locate back onto his notebooks. The lynching of law-abiding Mexican Americans includes Antonio Rodriguez, Jesus Bazan, and Hidalgo Commissioner Antonio Longoria. Now, let's look at this because often we listen to the stories of the hunter but never the hunted. The Texas Rangers became so notorious for their brutality against Mexicans and Mexican Americans that they dubbed them Los Diablos Tejanos, which means the Texan Devils. The Rangers were responsible for slaughtering thousands of Mexican Americans during their reign of terror. Still, they could get away with the violence as the Texas legislature would hide accounts of their brutality. Although they held hearings for the public to see. The facts are simple. The Texas Ranger shot Jesus Bazan and his son-in-law Antonio Longoria, the elected commissioner of Hidalgo County, dead as he rode his horse on a dirt road. They committed no crimes, but were killed by the Rangers, who they suspected were Mexican bandit sympathizers. They both came from well-respected, landowning families, and Longoria was an elected official. Or how about Antonio Rodriguez? They accused him of murdering 40-year-old white woman, Effie Greer Henderson, who was found on her porch with a bullet wound to the head and back. They arrested Rodriguez the following day and accused him of killing her in cold blood because she was supposedly rude when he asked her for food. Without a trial, he was beaten, lynched, and burned alive. Mexican investigators from San Antonio opened an investigation afterward. They found out that the Rock Springs locals didn't know anything of Rodriguez, which sparked an outrage that reached his hometown of Guadalajara. How about Leon Martinez? Jr., a Mexican-born and Texas-raised man, was lynched after being arrested on suspicion of murdering a 26-year-old white woman. He was the last person seen speaking to her, and despite proclaiming his innocence, he was pressured to confess to the crime by a violent mob and was hanged. Eventually, State Representative Jose Canales investigated the brutality of the Texas Rangers and State Police against Mexican Americans. Canales presented the case and gathered evidence and testimony from witnesses about the Rangers' racist violence. When the case went to trial, Canales brought 19 charges against the Texas Rangers, but after a lengthy court battle, they ultimately dropped the charges, of course. Friedrich paused before saying off subject, but most people don't know this because it isn't being told, nor written, even though the blacks started the civil rights, a very rare other than the blacks reaped the benefits from the civil rights bill and in way more than any black person did. But back on track. Suppose we search for the real history of the police in America. They started as gunslingers guarding the wealth of the rich on stagecoaches. They were also slave catchers working for slave owners whose slaves were their cash crop. From there, they protected the turn of the century wealthy landowners from the bandits and disgruntled land seekers and outlaws seeking gold. A part of them developed into the infamous Klan. As newly freed blacks were prospering and building townships like Black Wall Street, while the Great Depression destroyed white wealth, they were hired or volunteered to quote, protect the white people from black uprisings. They were behind the manuite riots of the 1920s to 1950s, which launched the black civil rights movements. White supremacists were always in law enforcement since the era of the marshals and the sheriffs, which named they took from the black Moors who ruled these lands for centuries. Marshal is just a play on Moors and sheriff is really sheriff or a ruling class of Moors. The star is also African Moorish and is taken from Ethiopia and the Star of David. These people invaded a land already settled and ruled by black indigenous people who kept much of their ancient culture and took it over. They had no culture or civil life of their own. They learned from us, have always stolen, and profited from our culture, but have envied us. Friedrich's buzzer went off and interrupted him. Ok, plus, that'll do it for today. North American colonists' warfare against Native Americans often was horrifyingly brutal, like the gifting of blankets and linens contaminated with smallpox. I need a paper from you to describe your thoughts on this matter. Wanyenyekevu also appointed that 10% of everyone's land belonged to the community. Since some land was dry while others were fertile, they used speedsters to build irrigation systems for gardening and livestock. Many saw a change in Queen, she learned and taught ecological stability and influential couples in history. She talked about us, President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama, Chef Marcus and Maya Samuelson, Denzel and Pauletta Washington, Omar and Keisha Epps, Angela Bassett and Courtney Bavance. Jonathan and Elijah taught classes on electronics and engineering and headed up the research and development team. Obe talked with his son, Dekarish, by his side. He taught his pupils about indigenous people and their lands, like the Dravidian or Harapian, the black race of people who first civilized what used to be called India and Pakistan thousands of years before the Hindu culture did. Daniel gave an impressive class on Egyptian history. Elisha talked about the miseducation of the so-called African American people. Neriglisar was nicknamed Big Teddy Bear because everyone loved him everywhere. He talked about the arts, bringing back music and dancing to the people, telling stories of artists from every genre, and creating holidays and celebrations for all cultures to enjoy. Told stories of such greats like Blind Lemon Jefferson, Roger Prince, Nelson, Michael Jackson, Jimi Hendrix, the Levert family, Marvin Gaye, Donny Hathaway and his daughter Lala. On Neriglisar's first day, he talked about Celia Cruz, Celia de la Caridad Cruz. Alfonso showed the entire world that life is a carnival. A Latin America's Black Queen, an influential artist in Latin music, and a crucial Black icon in a culture that did celebrate Blackness. She was born in Havana, Cuba. She learned Santeria music. Thanks to her neighbor, a practitioner and singer. Despite her father's disapproval at first, because he was a devoted Catholic, but agreed as long as she stayed in school. She started dabbling in Yoruba, a language spoken in West Africa. After 15 years of working with the Matantera, she became a staple of Havana's nightlife, and appeared in some famous golden age of Mexican cinema movies. When Fidel Castro rose to power, Celia was touring in Mexico, and when she attempted to return to Cuba and denied entry. She became a US citizen after joining the legendary Tito Puente. Determined to conquer the Cuban community who had settled in the US, her unique fashion style honored her Afro-Caribbean roots, merging elements of Cuban culture and her African ancestry. She became one of the most important salsas and tropical music figures, two genres historically dominated by men. Mercy talked about the deception of the Jews. Two things don't lie. That's the truth and na. Let's take the origin of the Ashkenazi Jews from Europe. Does this not contradict the fact that the European Jews primarily descend from people who left Israel and the Middle East 2000 years before? Most of the population originates from local Europeans who converted to Judaism. Little is known about their history before they were expelled from the Mediterranean and settled in Poland. We know that Ashkenazi Jews are genetically related to each other as fourth or fifth cousins. Researchers got strong answers for whether Ashkenazi originally came from Europe or the Near East. Past research found that 50 to 80% of na from the Ashkenazi chromosome was used to trace the Near East small lineage, which supported a story that Jews came from Israel and their intermarriage when they settled in Europe. However, based on accounts by the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, that said, by the time of the destruction of the Second Temple in Adzabini, as many as 6 million Jews were living in the Roman Empire. Therefore, there is no way that both statements could be true because only about 500,000 lived in Judea. The major Jewish communities were outside Judea when they analyzed mitochondrial na contained in the egg cytoplasm and passed down only from the mother, from more than 1,500 people throughout the Near East, the Caucasus, and Europe, including Ashkenazi Jews. They found that only 4 founders were responsible for 40% of Ashkenazi mitochondrial DNA, and they originated in Europe. We could trace most of the remaining people to other European lineages. Over 80% of the maternal families of Ashkenazi Jews could be traced to Europe, with only a few originating in the Near East. None come from the North Caucasus, along the border between Europe and Asia, between the Black and Caspian Seas. Most Ashkenazi Jews contrasted their roots to the mysterious Khazar kingdom that flourished during the 9th century in the region between the Byzantine and Persian empires. The genetics suggest many of the founding Ashkenazi women were converts from local European populations. The simplest explanation was that it was mainly women who converted, and they married men who had come from the Near East. Another possibility is that Jews actively converted both men and women among local populations at this time. Gamal Abdel Nasser, the beloved president of Egypt in 1956. Abdel went on television and radio in the Hamsinis and stated to the Ashkenazi, "You have left black and returned white. You are impostors and shall never see peate," similar to the $5 Indians in the late 1800s. White men could claim land if they could prove they were Native Americans, and you could do just that for $5 at the registrars of white. How many years passed for each generation to keep believing in this lie, that they were Native Americans? Grace opened her class by saying, "The Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Wakatilian males, called the Tuskegee experiment or Tuskegee syphilis study. An ethically abusive study was conducted between 1932 and 1972 by the United States. The Public Health Service and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on nearly 400 Wakatilians with syphilis. They define research as a systematic and creative action taken to increase knowledge about humans, culture, and society and to apply it in new areas of interest by using systematic and constructed scientific methods to obtain, analyze, and interpret data. My question is, we know who, we know what, we know how, and we even know the when and where. So, why did they want this done, and what was their conclusion to their data? When Al-Dhib came to his first class, he made his family and friends attend with wanyenyekevu, Jome, Obe, and the rest sitting on the front row of the classroom. He cleared his throat and spoke of self-respect and self-worth. My name is Al-Dhib. Before I met wanyenyekevu, as a matter of fact, I was the only that named him wanya because I couldn't, no, itake that back. I didn't want to learn his name, wanyenyekevu. Back then, they knew me as Jonathan. I sold drugs to my people for profit. I did many things for profit and didn't care about anyone but my brother. They said that drugs are the gateway to people becoming who they are. I disagree, drugs are not the gateway to being a negative person. Isai trauma, childhood abuse, molestation, and neglect are the gateway conditions, and the symptoms are drug abuse, violent behavior, hypersexuality, and self-harm. This condition leads a person to become who they become, good or bad. I am reminded of the infamous words, always trust everyone to be themselves, but trust in the fact you say them. It takes so much energy not to trust someone, trust them to be them. Trust asnaketo. Bite yo, trust a liar to lie to yo, trust a thief to steal from yo, but hail them when you say them. You say, this plate is a dream for me. Trusting people is a far-fetching thing where I'm from, for money will quickly stab you in the back for little of nothing. They would kill anyone, even though not a part of that straight life. But that dream has become a reality. Accept it, believe it, and retrieve it. I was ashamed of who I was and who I had become, but our childhood was not pretty. So I say, be yourself and be proud of who you are. Me and my brother Jome were raised into gutters, into streets. Before and after losing our parents at an early age. Our father was a pimp, and our mother was one of his hoes. Don't feel sorry for me on a bit, for the pain that I endured made me who I am today. I'm not going to give you my entire history, but many of you know or heard about me before we came here and me Maria get to the joy of me life. He paused, tense me led, I never get tired of saying that. My childhood created something in me that has allowed me to be just that, me. But I have seen people in the streets make 100 times more than the next man and have this hair about themselves. I have seen people smarter than others and have an hair about themselves totally less intelligent. Yes, I curse not as much, especially around those who have soft ears. But for centuries, we have taken quote bad words and made them into words of endearment. Christian was a negative word and it became a blessing. Niger was a negative word and it was changed into nigga. It was changed into a blessing and honor even. I have done many things that made me hard to get along with, but I have changed. I get bestranged to some who never experienced the things in which I experience, but I'm no longer ashamed of who or what I am. The Torah says in Moja Peter Mbili, tisa that we are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of him who have called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. I learned to accept and not be mad or jealous because I lacked intelligence or money. I was arrogant and selfish, but it is no more it is about that lives within me. Everything I ever wanted is here, and we are all equal, and we all are one. Everyone stood up and applauded Al-Dib as he placed his papers in a briefcase, and wanyenyekevu stood up to leave. Al-Dib looked at wanyenyekevu, Mrwanya, where you think you're going? Wanyenyekevu sighed, I thought you were rogue. Al-Dib smiled, did I say class dismissed? Wanyenyekevu sat back down, no, sir. Al-Dib sighed, laugter ist the medicine we all need to ease our stress, relax the soul. That reminds me of when we first met. He was an uptight and serious man. He made a few corny jokes, and then he got pretty funny as time passed, and in battle, he was so confident he was actually hilarious and bold. He got that from me. Wanyenyekevu smiled and shook his head to agree as Al-Dib continued. Laughter was the remedy for me, for if you look at it, life is funny. It's nothing more than the truth. It might not be when you say the problem, going through the crisis, but it's funny after a while and looking at the silly things we do as humans, what we do for love and material gain. We have to look at ourselves and say how life is funny and don't get caught up in this world, but get caught up in about. No, Mrwanya, I finished class, dismissed, as the crowd laughed. Wanyenyekevu returned home, felt extremely tired for no reason, and took a nap after Al-Dib's class. Lying down, he falls asleep. He says Queen walking towards him, happy, and asks, why are you so happy today? Smiling she replies, Kausei seyo, handsome, let's go to the lake, enjoy the view, and play slip rocks. They enjoy the lake for hours and return home as the evening closes. On their way home, there is a party going on. Whose celebration is this for? Queen Laugus, it's yours, silly, happy birthday. The crowd grows larger by the minute, and he hears Queen sigh, because of him, ni friends and family are gone. Wanyenyekevu smile becomes a frown, and in a ball of confusion, he looks at the people he is surrounded by and notices no one. Until Wanyenyekevu says his sister talking to Queen, but he did it for about a tal muscle. Man comes to the celebration, and Queen's fate lights up, and she shouts, "Me king, uhere have you been?" The stranger looks at Wanyenyekevu, raises his eyebrows and smiles, and says to Queen, "I been around baby." They both disappear and are seen upstairs in Queen's room moments later. Queen changes clothes in front of the man with her breast out and shakes them side to side as the man stares at Wanyenyekevu again with an evil smile. Queen shouted outside the window to everyone at the party, "If a nigga come looking for me, tell him I already got a man." Wanyenyekevu wakes up from his dream. As he tries to understand his vision, he turns to see something written in his notepad when he sees someone else's handwriting on one of the pages in his book. Looking at the writing, he noted it was Queen's handwriting. Furious that someone wrote and read his heart's desire, he spoke into his earpiece. "Queen, where is your location?" Queen, hearing his tone, replied, "At the lake, what's wrong?" Wanyenyekevu, thinking about his dream, just sighed, "I'm on my way." Rushing to his skicraft, he opened the book and started reading what Queen had written, and his steps got slower and slower as he reached his skicraft. "It's beautiful," Wanyenyekevu thought to himself. Upon reaching Queen, she noted the notepad in his hand. "I know you're mad, but you wrote that." Wanyenyekevu smiled. "I was mad because no one has ever seen me work, and I." Realizing the dream was a trick, he sighed, "I didn't know you wrote so beautifully. Itame here to give you a piece of me mind, but I think I would rather give you a piece of me heart. I love it, and honestly, I think I love you, but I never had the heart to tell you. Because I'm she." Queen grabbed the book, opened it to the poem, and read what she wrote aloud. "So, you want to be me boy, the only that only me heart will know. Entering into the depth of one entire soul, as we bond and continue to grow. Understanding the meaning of love. Through the words we share. Leaning on one another when the Lord is more than one can bear. Reading your heart with the look in your eye. Never allowing our love to die. Standing by me side through this storm of life. For you have chosen me to be your wife. For now and forever until death do us part." Queen softly grabbed Wanyenyekevu by his chin and looked him in the eyes, and continued, "If you can promise that, you can have the case to me heart. You ask if I am the one. Is this time for real? Only if we really understand how we feel. The love we share is not yet of physical touch. So, are you sure that it is me that you love so much? I never knew true love, I never thought it was for me. Now you tell me that it could be a chosen one even for me. That it is you. Me love so true that I have waited so long to embrace. Standing at the altar. Now love fills that empty spot. as we stand fate to fate. Wanyenyekevu side. I promise. And Queen said wanyenyekevu, and side, I promise as well. Wanyenyekevu looked at Queen and said, I will be your Adam, and you will be me Eve. And off the top of his head, wanyenyekevu said to Queen, in me eyes, I say me Eve. I am committed to me Queen, dedicated to me Queen. Eve. Mother of the living. You taught the art of love and compassion, the art of giving. Populated the foundations, taught wisdom to the means of the work. Made time to give of yourself. Molded me to be me. I felt all her pain, frustrations, and anguish. Yet it was hidden with a smile. Felt all her joy, happiness, and love. Having is to say, because you are a part of me. The Almighty guided me to you. He was pleased, and gave you me. Me Eve. Unaware that many people were there, they started cheering and heard a few people saying about time. Like wildfire, the news was spread throughout the region about Queen and wanyenyekevu. Dark Eagle and the rest of wanyenyekevu's closest friends celebrated for days as people were happy to welcome the new couple. On the festival's last night, wanyenyekevu lay down, unaware he was dreaming, he heard a voice, "Why is it you can't sleep, young Libert? Has the spirit of Sabaoth prepared you for your journey?" Wanyenyekevu spoke to the man, unaware the man had called him Libert. "What journey do you speak of?" "I just couldn't sleep and walked along the lake until I came across. How is it you know me name?" Wanyenyekevu was putting up a notebook in his hand and gathering his thoughts as he stood up. The messenger continued, "The spirit of King Solomon is upon you. The wisdom, heart, and soul of King Solomon you have been blessed with. Many times Sabaoth has used just on a man to get his people to say. Like the prophets Elijah and Elisha and countless others. You and your descendants will use words of wisdom, piety, and the sword to destroy Sabaoth's enemies. Your writings have reached the ears of Sabaoth, and he rejoices in your words. For this reason, you are no longer called Libert, but wanyenyekevu." The old man transformed into a wolf. Wanyenyekevu shook his head and rubbed his eye as the old man continued, "In 3 days, you will see me again in this form, and I will be your guide on a journey. For 3 days, you shall perform the holy journey and bid your family farewell, for they will not see you for 150 seasons. Notice, before you leave the state of Louisiana, you shall endure many trials and tribulations to enhance your spiritual man and physical body that will prepare you for your journey. Be not afraid, for Sabaoth will be with you the entire time." Quickly interrupting. Wanyenyekevu smiled and sighed, "How can a man live to be 150 seasons, sir? You know that with Sabaoth, all things are possible, but it will not be you, but your blood and your spirit shall return to Sabaoth's people, and his name shall be called Cush." The old man replied, "With your blood in saying you shall say more, and for hearing you shall hear more. And with your spirit you shall control the flesh, say with the ears of Sabaoth, and teach others to do the same." The old man smiled as he transformed again. "Behold your wife." As he continues, an image of a beautiful woman appears in a cloud of smoke. "Your spirits are as one, and the love you shared will be forever. it will be remembered as an example of Sabaoth's happiness between man and woman. Wife. Wanyenyekevu sighed aloud, and then he was taken back into darkness and heard another voice. Adam had to realize that he needed Eve. Just like you had to realize you needed Anaya, and Anaya had to realize she needed you, and you both were meant for each other. Go in peace and be happy with your wife, for many blessings will come to you both. Wanyenyekevu opened his eyes, and it was the next day. Queen approached Wanyenyekevu with a strong look on her face and asked, "Didn't you say your name was Libert?" Wanyenyekevu looked at her and said, "Yes, will you ask me that?" Queen continued, "I dreamt that a young man was at a lake, and Melky appeared to him as a wolf at first. Wanyenyekevu said he had the same dream, but what you saw in the dream happened to me days before I made my journey here, that was over 9 years ago." When then took Wanyenyekevu by the hand and took a seat. I've been a tomboy all my life and never really knew anything about being domesticated. I helped me out, but I enjoy hanging out with my brothers, fishing, riding horses, and stuff like that. I'm happy Sabaoth has sent you to be my husband, for I know you are a good man, kindashi, but a good man. Wanyenyekevu smiled as she continued, "What I'm trying to say is I'm willing to be the best wife I can be." Wanyenyekevu held her hand. "They taught me as a young child how to be, as you call it, domesticated and a man. The things I don't know were taught to me on my way here. I was never a warrior, as a matter of fact, my grandmother made me cook and clean, telling me, imitating Big Ma voice, you don't need a woman to cook and clean when you can do it yourself. So, what you don't know, we can do together and learn from each other. That's how we become strong and as one." When smiled and sighed, "I like that." After 6 months, they set a date for their wedding. Herr Friedrich would with them, Jome and Alvib would be his best men, and Dark Eagle would give her away. Later that night, Wanyenyekevu sat on his bed thinking about his conversation with Queen. He looked up and started to talk to Sabaoth. "Lord, please humble me and make me what you want me to be for you and me wife to be. I'm nervous and can't sleep worrying about being married to such a beautiful and strong woman. I ask this in your son's name, Amen." As he tosses and turns in his bed, he reaches for his pen and paper and writes, "Self-righteous. The pride of never being wrong is never being rigged. You say to yourself, no one can tell me anything. You say you got all the answers to everything is correct. They are all rigged. But that's to you and only you. Self-righteous. Open minded to nothing, close minded to everything. Self-righteous. Did you know that being wrong helps you learn how to be rigged? Do rigged. But being rigged, all the time makes you wrong. Do wrong. He that knows the answers to everything knows nothing. There is only one who knows all. He's above, not down here amongst the spheres. But to self-righteous people they cannot hear the words that he say. We that learn from our wrongs, learn to do rigged be righteous. Not self-righteous. So humble yourself in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Then he wrote a poetess. Words of love, words of pain, words of relief, the poetess. She describes her life, her feelings, and emotions as mine. A parase of determination, a fragment of joy, sentences that combine the two. The poetess reaches into the heart to break away the stones. The walls that have been built up. The poetess vowels of passion, syllables that come to life. Consonants that grow deep inside you that someday will shine. Letting the world know, feel and say. The poetess wrote. Uos to blame. Uhente sun refuses to shine. Uos to blame. Uhente stars refuse to sparkle at night. Many times it seems like im te blame just for being a man. No one is always rigged, trying the best that he can. Giving me all, but that seems like it's just not enough. Baby, uos to blame. They said that your love is pure as gold, that is what I've been told. If that is true, grab a hold, because me love will unfold. I got rogue ups and downs. Many times you've even seen me pine. Give me time, give me spate, the only thing I ask. Uos to blame. Uos to blame when I need help. Can I call on you or will you let me down? Always been there for you, you know this is true. I did it because I cared. No in me pain. You're never here, uos to blame. He wrote, searching for love. Wanting to be adored for me mind, not for me money. Saying no money, no honey. Always getting hurt, searching for love. Heart becoming so cold, searching for love. Always giving, never receiving. World life be better alone. Hell no. That would be a sad, sad song. Don't all that ignore, searching for love. Looking for just one to show me love. Taking sent from heaven above. If turned down the rigged honest and chose the wrong honest in the past. Searching for love. Lust deceived me. Lies made them, believe me. Searching for love. Searching for love. No more I'll let love find me. Then he wrote, take me heart. Just take it. Take me heart. Giving you all that he got. Tired of trying so hard to look for love, so take me heart and do as you will. Whatever you like. Tired of being used, abused, or even someone's substitute. Give you a treasure that can't be measured. Can you say the pain? Can you say the love I had in the past? Years ago. I gave you the best, gave you me, but you couldn't say. Take me heart. Do whatever you like, tear it apart. Whatever is in your heart. Trusting your love caused loneliness. You come to me with your arms opened wide. An unexpected dream, you sighed. But all I say no is pride, lying next to you. I realized that our love has died. I told you, as I was crying, you can have me heart. Take me heart. No, please, leave me heart alone. Queen's battalion was up for their chicle to protect the perimeter, and the week after their return would be the wedding day. While Queen and her battalion were on duty, Wanyenyekevu prepared his house as their home, and they agreed on where they would live. With the help of his friend and speedster Grake, they prepared a beautiful home for him and Queen. A big beautiful, spacious tutto home, for she had already decided she wanted a large family, so Wanyenyekevu planted a vegetable garden on one side of the house and an herb garden on the other. Front and back of the house, There was enough space to grow beautiful flowers and evergreen grass, and the rest of the land was open land with horses and farm animals and an enormous barn and work space to work the ground as they pleased. He used 20% of the land instead of 10% for the community to raise and breed horses. The community came together and helped wanyenyekevu, and his top officials decorated the rest of the property for the wedding and the biggest wedding party they had ever seen. Once the queen's duties were completed, Jome and his battalion took responsibility for the perimeter, but Made Sure he was nearby not to miss the ceremony, saying he was the best man. Brake, Merchi, and Joy coordinated it all. Aldib helped with all the electrical and computerized work, installing microphones, monitors, and speakers within the zoo. While Elijah and Elisha configure and install others outside the zoo. The estimated crowd size was in the thousands, and the zoo would only hold some of them. Dark Eagle and his sons prepared 6 pits and smoked Queen's favorite foods, and her aunt designated her the most beautiful dress. Daniel and Obe organized security and seating arrangements by region. Neriglisar gathered all the classical music he heard wanyenyekevu play, mixture of R&B Joy, Avant, Anita Baker, and Luther Vandross and some jazz by Najee, Santana, and Grover Washington Jr.